Here we go. Happy, happy, happy day, everybody. I'm Mary Grace. I'm here today with you with our good friend, Dr. Troy Spurill, and we have another amazing show lined up for you. If you missed the last one, you really missed out. We had an incredible Q&A session. We had hundreds, thousands of people on the live, and people have just come to expect nothing but the best and the highest quality from our conversations. I do want to say one thing. Dr. Troy is a doctor. This show is for information and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to diagnose or treat any illness. And it is recommended that you contact and consult with your healthcare professional if you decide to make any changes to your routine, particularly to medications. We encourage you to reach out to Dr. Troy and his team at officialsynapse.com. But for the purposes of our disclaimer and legal, we are not providing medical advice on this show. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Troy. It's great to have you back.
Yes, thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much.
We have a lot to talk about today, so we're going to jump right in. Dr. Troy is the founder and director of Official Synapse Wellness Center up in Minnesota. And he also has his team works with patients all over the place. How many states, how many countries do you now have patients in?
Currently, all 50 states and 12 different countries.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And so, telemedicine is one of the real good outcomes of the last 4 years. People have gotten more comfortable with it, and you're seeing patients who have become disillusioned with other ways of getting help to take care of their health. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I think that people are starting to take note of, is that your health is your greatest gift and responsibility. And for a very long time, people have outsourced that to a system that
Yeah.
really cares more about the bottom line than about their actual health. And that's really changing. And practices like yours are stepping into the void and filling the gap and giving people real answers, which is amazing. I wanted to ask you today if you could tell us a little bit about what you're seeing the most in your practice. You have people coming to you from all over the country and all over the world. And so I think you have a good cross section of what's being represented in terms of illnesses and ailments and the needs of different people.
That is a really good question. The thing that we're actually seeing the most, I'm going to say it this way first, is inflammation, but it's manifesting different with everyone. So people are coming in with the symptoms of shortness of breath, symptoms of depression. They're coming in with fatigue. A lot of the chronic inflammatory problems. We're seeing a lot more autoimmune uh, coming through our doors, although that's been increasing over the years, and it's just in the last 3 years just jumped even further. Um, yeah, the cardiovascular we're seeing a lot of. So people who have had strokes, people who've had like different heart issues, and just want peace of mind. We've had more people calling in for peace of mind testing than ever before. And that actually warms my heart because it means people are being proactive, because we're either preparing or we're repairing. And that's really important, especially when we kind of get into everything that's happening with our food supply, our diet, our lifestyles, just stress in general. So it's a lot of cardiovascular, it's a lot of peace of mind around breast health and digestive health, and a lot of cognitive stuff, a lot of forgetfulness and memory issues and balance. So by far the most important, the most common thing is like just this low grade dizziness that people are talking about all the time. And then just recently, I've had two things that have been very, very concerning. One is um, people who have never really been sick in their life are getting little colds and flus and bugs a little bit more frequently than they used to.
Mhm.
And the dizziness factor, I'm going to throw out there a little bit more. I've had a lot of patients who've had family members who've lost their balance and then have actually fallen downstairs and fractured bones, or even two of my patients just in the last week had family members fracture their neck from balance issues. So we're seeing a lot of that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The balance issue is something that, my mom struggled with. It was something that my dad was struggling with until we made some changes to his medication. I worked with
Yeah.
his doctor on that. We actually took him off of a certain medication. And it struck me that, especially older people who get put on prescriptions, they tend to get out of balance.
Yes.
Um, and that can be directly attributed to those things. I, though, was having some issues with balance, and I'm a person who's been very athletic. I do stand-up paddling. I do things that require a lot of balance, grew up riding horses, and so I've always had good balance, but I noticed that I was getting what you were describing, which would be kind of like a vertigo thing,
Yeah.
and I thought, what in tarnation is happening
Yes.
here?" And so that was along around the time when I decided to go low carb and to cut out a lot of ingredients from my diet, and I noticed that was one of the first things that improved. And I know that you and your team work with people on many, many levels, including different levels of testing, including diet. Can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the solutions that you're finding for people who are facing these issues?
Yeah. So we'll specifically go down the path of that low grade dizziness. I'll give you some
Yeah,
examples.
yeah.
So if you have intestinal inflammation just from food that you're eating, so too much sugar or a food reactant,
Mhm.
or a lot of times if we have any imbalance with our good and bad bacteria, if we have a little bit of inflammation in our intestinal tract and the intestinal tract spasms, there's a couple weird things that can happen. Number one, you can have nausea. So nausea is actually from your intestines spasming a little bit, or the gallbladder bile duct spasming. But the net effect is, have you ever heard how, like, when people have a heart attack, they can have pain down their left arm?
Yes.
That's called a viscerosomatic reflex. Viscera
Okay.
meaning organ, soma is Greek for body. So it's a referral from an organ to a different part of the body. When your intestinal tract spasms, it actually refers to the back of the head area here in the neck. It tightens and the head shifts a little bit, and we end up getting an accumulation of fluid in the head and can be middle ear, causing a little balance issue. So the real problem is really the digestive tract. For people at home, all you have to do is kind of go down by your belly button and just kind of go to the right of the belly button a little bit and push. If there's any pain there, that's a sign that you're having a little inflammatory reaction. It's not life threatening, but the
Mhm.
dizziness can become really problematic. So it's a
Sure.
sign, and that can come from having some coffee that irritates the gut, and then some sugar
Interesting.
afterwards, things like that.
So that would explain how me taking these things out of my diet
Yeah.
would put me in a better place to reduce that inflammation. And also, I've been doing kind of an elimination diet. So
Yeah.
taking away those factors that contribute to that, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to give you a quick little secret for those that are listening. There's
Mhm.
always a stimulant involved, and then there's something actually pretty healthy that's involved. So a stimulant is coffee and sugar,
Yeah.
smoking, or medication, and they
Okay.
cause a inflammatory reaction on your intestinal tract. That's kind of like, so think of it this way. If you're getting a massage on your
Mhm.
skin, it can relax the muscles and it feels good. But if you have a sunburn, which is inflammation, you get that same massage, it becomes problematic. It doesn't
Mhm.
feel good.
Yeah.
So if you eat something that's basically inflammatory, the coffee, the sugar in particular, and then you take something that's got fiber in it. Fiber's job is to massage the lining of the intestinal
Okay.
tract. So anything like raw fruits and vegetables, popcorn, and even nuts that don't get digested properly will rub up against the intestine, and then it spasms. So it starts with something inflammatory, coffee or sugar, and
Mhm.
then the good fiber comes in, rubs up against it. So we don't want you to stop the fiber. It's a very temporary thing and it won't happen all the time. But just go down and massage the spasm out of the intestinal tract. That will reduce the spasm in the back of the neck, and you'll be shocked at how the vertigo and dizziness starts to go away. And I also temporarily have people remove some of those inflammatory things, the coffee or the sugar, for a couple of days.
Mhm. Mhm.
And to your point, the medications can be a stimulatory of the digestive system, but
Okay.
also blood pressure medications will just reduce the blood pressure too much, and you don't get enough oxygen
Yeah.
to the brain. Double whammy.
Yeah, that's what was happening to my dad, and
Yeah,
he was like one of those Weeble Wobble dolls. And, that's no fun when you're out walking around and you don't have anywhere to sit
yeah.
down.
No.
So, yeah, that was pretty concerning. And so it's very interesting. I wanna talk to a little bit about the cardiovascular, but somebody was asking about, peace of mind testing.
Mm,
Basically, that is where you're getting screening done proactively
yeah.
just to be sure about things. So, for example, I've been, uh I'm gonna have some blood work done just so that I can kind of get a baseline of
Yeah.
things so that if something does come along, I have something to compare it to. Is that one of the examples?
It is, but we go much more in depth. Like, for
Okay.
example, in traditional medicine, their testing is just to check your cholesterol, and it's very, very,
Mhm.
out of date. That is so old school, and we now know
Okay.
that that's not even a good indicator for cardiovascular disease. So, for us, peace of mind testing, we do some very key things. We have a technology called the endopat. It measures the stiffness of your arteries. It
Mhm.
measures the endothelial lining of the arteries. So we can see if there's a problem with what's called your glycocalyx. So if you've never smoked and you've eaten a clean diet, but all of a sudden your endothelial lining comes back like that of a 70-year-old smoker, we know something has damaged the lining of your blood vessels. And in the last 3 years, we know pretty much what that can be. And
Right.
so with that, we look and say, okay, does diet, how healthy are your blood vessels? At the same time, that endopat test measures how's your brain regulating your artery system. So your blood pressure can
Mhm.
go up because your arteries are too stiff, or because your nerves are causing it to constrict. And so we that test tells us the health of the brain to artery as well as the health of the artery
Okay.
itself. We also do things like thermography. Thermography measures the temperature of your body and temperature changes. So, for example, in breast health and dental health, we can see blood vessels start to grow, and we can see problems 10 years before it becomes the C word, as far as just detrimental
Mhm.
conditions that way. Now,
Mhm.
it doesn't catch everything. So mammograms sometimes we'll still use, but it's a non-invasive tool to actually measure that. And then the third level of peace of mind is the lab testing. We will order all kinds of different lab tests to tell us how healthy you are. For example, if we're looking at cholesterol, we don't get the general cholesterol panel. We order 12 different levels of cholesterol. For example, the LDL particle that you get tested with your traditional cholesterol panel is actually
Mhm.
broken down into multiple smaller particles. The big particles really aren't the problem. It's the really tiny ones. So if you have normal cholesterol, but you have too many of the really tiny cholesterols, that
Mhm.
will cause damage. So the real thing that we need to know is, for your risk factors, is how many of those small ones do you have?
Okay.
A lot of people in Italy and Greece have like large cholesterol in the 300s, 350, but they have
Mhm.
none of the little ones. All that
Mhm.
means is they're very protective and they're not going to have heart disease.
Mhm.
So it goes
Interesting.
into a much
Yeah.
deeper level.
Well, and I think one of the things that has been done through our system is that cholesterol has been demonized, and we need cholesterol,
We
right?
do.
I mean, our brains need it, it's really necessary. Like, if you eliminate cholesterol, you could be in serious trouble,
Yeah,
right?
all people, I really want people to hear this. All of our hormones are made from cholesterol. And a
Wow.
lot of people who did not do well all through the flu season and past infection seasons, their hormones are too low. Well, it's because they're on cholesterol lowering medication. Our goal is to have your cholesterol be balanced, but as high as possible to manage what's coming. So you actually need good cholesterol, good levels of cholesterol to make all the hormones. And truthfully, what we're finding with a lot of our people that are having memory issues is it because they have low hormones. They need vitamin D, and vitamin D is a
Mhm.
part of that cholesterol experience. So the more infections you have, the more your immune system has to work, your vitamin D will actually go low. Well, vitamin D is a precursor for a lot of the hormones that we're making with cholesterol. And so we need high good cholesterol. We need high good DHEA, which is the first hormone part of it. And we need high vitamin D. And when I say high on a lab test, I mean between 50 and 80. I like my patients to be around that 80 mark.
Mhm.
And so probably 90% of people that come in that we test are deficient of vitamin D.
And the interesting thing that I've heard is that traditional blood testing, if you go to your doctor for a checkup, they're not ordering the vitamin D test at all, and
Yeah.
they won't cover it even if you ask for it, and this brings me to something about insurance, and I've talked about this before, is I think a lot about this because the deal with health insurance is that people have outsourced their health decisions to the health insurance companies depending on how much they'll pay and what they'll pay for. And this to me is like outsourcing the health of your car
Yeah.
to the car insurance company. And so if the car insurance company won't pay for tires, then you just drive with bald tires.
Yeah.
If they won't pay for windshield wipers, you drive with dangerously bare windshield wipers or none at all. And then a catastrophe happens and you think, "Oh, how could this have happened?" And it's because you didn't take personal responsibility to cover those things and you were depending on the insurance to tell you what was
Yeah.
necessary and warranted. And I see this all the time. If insurance was just for catastrophic, I think we would actually be better off as a society. What do
We,
you
we
think about that?
I 100% agree. In 2008, I was brought on a radio show and talking about universal healthcare because they were trying to push Obamacare through, and I came out against it because we're funding a broken system. And to your point, insurance only covers your car when there's damage that's been done. Insurance only covers the house when damage has been done. They
Mhm.
don't pay you to cut your grass. They don't pay you to detail the car. You have to budget for that and do it yourself. The same is true for your body. So I really want your listeners to hear this. I want you to start budgeting for your health care, being
Yeah.
proactive, taking care of yourself like you do your car, like you do your house. And because they will never pay to keep you healthy. They are
Yeah.
basically paying once there's damage to your body. That's it. And that's the way the system is set up. And so they've gotten to a pretty crucial point, though, where the number of unhealthy people is really, really high. And what used to take people 2 to 3 days to recover from, it's now taking them 5 to 7. So the
Mhm.
hospitals are in trouble right now because there's a lot of people in the hospitals. The hospitals are only getting paid for 2 to 3 days, but the people are staying there for 5 to 7 days because the people taking care of them in the hospitals care and they're not releasing them. But the it's causing a huge burden on the hospitals, and most of the hospital systems are actually in debt right now, even though they're the busiest they've ever been, and that's because of insurance problems, and it's set up backwards. So I'm with you 100%.
Mhm.
Being
Yeah,
proactive,
yeah.
budgeting for your health, and taking care of yourself. What that looks like back, and we have an example of this. Czechoslovakia in the 40s lost their healthcare system. And it was about the same time we started onboarding our Medicare system. We as a nation were healthier in the United States at that time. And
Mhm.
when we started implementing the Medicare system and Czechoslovakia lost their national system, they had to actually communicate to each other how to be proactive, how to prevent diseases.
Yeah,
When stuff came up, people took care of themselves because they couldn't afford a $20,000 surgery out of
right.
pocket. So people did everything to
Yeah,
prevent that.
yeah.
And we went the opposite way. Now we don't even rank in the top 70 in the world for health in the
And
United
we
States.
spend the most per capita, right? Do
We
we?
spend double the next country, which is Japan. Japan is number
Wow,
2, and we
wow.
spend double them. and we don't even come
Wow.
in the top 70%.
That is amazing. Yeah. It's just, um, it's just incredible. I mean, wow. It really I mean, I don't wanna get into conspiracy theories, but it feels like there's a lot of intentionality behind what's happening to Americans in terms of their physical well-being or lack thereof, our food supply, what's in our food, what's not in our food, and one of the things that's come to my attention lately, for example, is something called seed oils. And this is something that, our country has been using really since I think the 30s,
Yeah,
Crisco, things like that. It's really a misnomer to call it it's called vegetable oil or vegetable shortening, but this is a misnomer because it's actually an industrial waste byproduct,
yeah,
and it was heavily marketed in our country under the guise of being healthier than animal fats. Can you tell us what you know about that and why it's so bad and how we're transitioning people who are becoming
yes.
more aware are transitioning out of
Yeah.
that?
I love this question because this is so important for your health and well-being, for your brain, and managing your inflammatory system, which I said is the number one thing that we're seeing. So I'll just start with this statement so people can hear it. Avoiding seed oils is going to help you manage inflammation. Point number one. To your other point about just the conspiracy part of it, um, I have a quote: "Don't ascribe to malice what can be ascribed to incompetence and poor incentives." There's a lot of
Okay.
incompetence, a lot of poor incentives. I'm
Yeah.
not saying there isn't malice, but Scripture says that the love of money is the root of all evil, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of incompetent people choosing money and profits over the community. We're seeing a lot of that, and that has to change. We need to get people in charge of our decision making at the from our food chain,
Mhm.
at the FDA, all of those areas. It's so crucial. So, having said that, I have a video. It's a 4-minute video on our website. If you go to www.officialsynapse.com, you'll see
Mm,
an actual video of our immune system under the microscope. And in that video, I show how our immune system cleans up the environment. I show how it actually helps protect us against cancers and other things like that. And so it's all right there. Now, here's the point when it comes to the seed oils. All of our membranes of our cells, they're like, round or square, but all of our membranes contain phospholipid bilayer. That's fats. All of our cells break down. And so when they break down, you then have to build them back up with raw ingredients. So if you look around in the room that you're in back home, all of the rooms will have 2x4s. That's the phospholipids. So when you look at our fats, if you have what's called a trans fat, trans means bent. So if you have bent 2x4s
ooh,
on a wall, and that's what your raw ingredients are for your body to rebuild the wall, that's like building a house or a room with bent 2x4s. What's going to happen? It's going to collapse. It's not going to hold up. So, for example, a red blood cell gets replaced every 143 days. But if you use seed oils and things like that with bent or trans fats, all of a sudden that 143 days becomes maybe 32 days or 64 days. It's not as sturdy, it's not as strong.
mhm.
It's your immune system that has to go in and clean that up. And that's what I show on that video is the
Okay.
immune system, how it goes in and it cleans it up. It's a live shot of the immune system. It's phenomenal. And so it really impacts us. When we have these seed oils, our cells all start to cave in. They're just not as efficient. And it's
Mhm.
kind of like living in a shack versus a really, really nice home, well built. That's what
Okay.
happens.
And I think that, people are becoming a little more aware, but some of the things that I think when it comes to brand names and types of foods, I think it's helpful for people to understand when you're looking at labels, what are you gonna see? I know canola oil,
Hmm.
safflower, even if it's organic,
Yep.
expeller press, like all of those kind of, woo-woo words that make you think it's healthy, it doesn't matter because it's the same type of food. Um, if you have, shortening, vegetable shortening, but also some of these heart smart spreads and margarines
Yeah.
and cheeses, they're in a lot of processed cheeses like American cheese. I have noticed that they're in a lot of these, keto snacks
Yeah.
that if you're buying bars, for example, Atkins bars, there's one called One Bar. If you look at the ingredients, you're gonna see that there are, again, these organic, like, canola oil.
Yep.
Um, right? And so I do know too that a lot of commercially produced olive oils are being, um, watered down with seed oils, unfortunately,
Yeah.
right?
Again, the
Yeah.
love of money. They're trying to increase profits by putting in something that not
Mhm.
only is not beneficial, is actually detrimental to us, and the
Yeah.
olive oil is extremely beneficial to us. The polyphenols count in the
Yeah.
olive oils are what really help us, and as you add these other oils, there's canola, there's corn, there's cottonseed oil, soy, sunflower, safflower, I think you mentioned, grapeseed, and rice bran are all examples of these seed oils, and then rapeseed oil is canola oil. So when you see that, just know that's the same thing. When you start adding those seed oils in with the good oil, it
Mhm.
can trick us, and that's what they've started doing. They slap on the organic label, and then they
Yeah.
fill
Yeah.
it with these other seed oils, and they have to write it on the container in most countries, and that's what's getting so
Mhm.
pure
Yeah.
olive
Yeah.
oil, and we want to cook
Mhm.
with more of a organic coconut oil. You can cook
Mhm.
that with heat, and then
Mhm.
really the olive oil. Even just taking a teaspoon of olive oil with high polyphenol count, so organic cold pressed olive oil.
Mhm.
That just taking a teaspoon of it or putting it over a salad or over food cold does so much for your body. I even have
Mhm.
patients that will put the olive oil through their hair, on their skin, and
Mhm.
it's amazing how beneficial it is for you just to get that good olive oil. My wife and I collect olive oil like some
Mhm.
people collect fine wines. We have over 8 different bottles in
Wow.
the house right now.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just love getting a good olive oil. We will go uh, cuckoo for when someone gives us a gift, and we look it up, and we see that the company measures the polyphenol count, and it's like a really fine wine, and we have little bottles of olive oil that are $80 because of just their purity, and we'll take
Sure.
little teaspoons of
Yeah.
it, and for us that's
Yeah.
like fine
Yeah.
wine.
Yeah. I've been getting into I wanna talk a little bit about animal fats too because that's been demonized, and, I've been getting into tallow. I've made some of my own. Tallow is the rendered fat from a ruminant animal, right? Lard is the rendered fat from, uh, pork, and there's very high quality in that, and it has tons of vitamins. Um, and this is one of those things that when the seed oils came into being, when they got pushed into the market, we were told that that red meat, animal fat, butter, whole milk, all of those things were bad for you, which I always found kind of curious because God made them just that
Hmm.
way. And so I always wondered how in the world is non-fat milk better if God made it full fat, right?
Yep.
The Bible talks about, like, the cream and
Yeah.
the fat of the land and things like that, and, I mean, let's face it, they it when, when our country was being developed, when the Old West was being settled, nobody ever got shot for stealing a cabbage, but if you stole somebody's cattle
Yeah.
or their horse, then it was actually a hanging offense because
Yeah.
that was their sustenance, right? So I just think that's really interesting. But animal fats, yeah, so the really high quality coconut
Yeah.
oil, those are non-animal fats, avocado, olive oil, but again, you gotta know your sourcing, right?
Yeah.
And then animal fats. Can you talk a little bit about that? and just, eating animal products.
Yeah, what you said there that was bang on was sourcing. So a lot of what they will do is we have a general saying: if God made it, it's good. If man changed it, just beware. And man has altered and changed a lot of our food supply. So even cattle, if it's processed, and the processing of meat, the processing of food, a lot of times there's actual chemicals from the processing plant that are now in the food. So when they do studies on reactions, and I've seen them, of red meat studies causing vascular spasms, they don't differentiate between the quality of the meat and the protein. And there's a lot of other factors. For example, we know that when you add a lot of sugar with red meat, then it becomes much, much more inflammatory. When you do a carnivore type diet and it's just red meat, you don't get that same response. It'll spike for a little bit, and then it actually normalizes and starts becoming an anti-inflammatory. We have
Yeah, and can I
people,
just say something about that too? Because I've been hearing that the studies that say that red meat causes cancer or that it's bad for you actually don't they don't, study just eating red meat by itself. They're always
correct.
including the standard American diet, which
Yes.
has all of the carbs and the refined sugars. For
Yeah.
example, the McDonald's meal that has the fries cooked in seed oil, the
Yes.
burgers cooked in seed oil, the buns, which are full of sugar, all of those things
Yeah.
added, and the red meat is just a small portion,
Yeah.
and that's where they're concluding that. Yeah.
Yes, we're going to start getting new data though, because we now have people who have done just red meat for over a decade, and we're starting to see some of their numbers come in. We have a large population of people who have done that, and they're doing pretty well actually, in the grand scheme of things. And we know we need the protein, and there are some studies that show that we need the saturated fats as well. It's actually a
Mhm.
big part
Yeah, yeah.
of the wellness response from our stress gland, from our adrenal
Mhm,
gland. But again, it does matter, because a stressed out animal that's producing cortisol will actually affect us a little bit negative as well. So I will say this about part of the cattle industry: a lot of times they'll feed the cattle like corn because it stresses out their digestive system, and then they become fatter, and they get paid based on that fat content. So we will pay for
mhm,
marbled beef. So because it tastes good, number one, and
mhm,
they get paid more for that marbling. But if you are uh, consuming the cortisol, or a lot of the parts of the animal that from a stressed out animal, it will affect us negatively. So there is a component where you want to try and really take a look at where you're getting your meat from.
mhm, mhm.
And we have very specific sources that we know what's being fed, and we know how they're taking care of themselves. There's a good example, yes. And so
This
we
is our
will look at that.
freeze-dried right
Yeah,
here. For those of you who are just audio only, I'm showing the package of our freeze-dried beef. It's grid down, chow down, and these guys are sourcing the beef from directly. They know the ranchers and farmers who are growing this beef, right out in the middle of the country, and it's freeze-dried. It's not dehydrated. I just have to put this in. Not dehydrated, and it's shelf stable. So you were talking about earlier preparing for what
yeah,
might be coming. And this is a really great way to do it. Just use promo code Mary Grace when you go there. They have a subscription model. They're expanding into some other foods as well. So if that's a concern for you, the quality of what the cows are eating, where they're coming from, knowing the farmer, this is a great way to do it. Another really important thing too is to get to know locally
yeah,
who is growing food, because that is really the most sustainable. And just to buy a share of a cow, and that's something I'm looking into as well, because the farmers don't really want to ship it halfway across the
no,
country. They want you to come and get it from them, right? And so I think the more we're able to do that, the more we're also able to keep big brother out of our food supply, right?
yeah.
I
We'll
mean,
organize events where when we find someone who's raising the animals the way we want, then we will get a group together, whether it be patients or friends or neighbors,
okay.
and we will support that farmer. and we will get as much as we can from them. And we organize it. We try and take as much off the load of the farmer, because their job is stressful, and they're providing such a great service to us, especially the ones that are making organic choices. They don't generally get the support of the government. They don't generally get the
Mhm.
support that the rest of the farmers do, if the farmers are even getting support.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so the quality of the food is so important. So spread the word when you find someone who's doing it right. Get a group together and support them as much as possible. Even if you have to pay the same amount that you would in the store, go ahead and do it to support that one farmer, to give them a little peace of mind financially, so that they can take
Mhm.
care of their land, and do it season by season by season.
Yeah, I think that's really important because I think people feel like when you go to the farmer's market or when you go to a local farm that they're supposed to give you a deal.
Yeah,
And I think that the opposite kind of should be true, and this is something I remember when President Trump used to talk a lot, he still does, about regulation and
yeah,
how regulation is really detrimental to small business.
yeah,
This is a good example because the EPA and all of the regulators, they don't want small businesses to stay in business and to be viable. I mean, look what happened during the pandemic. What companies were forced to shut
yeah,
down? It wasn't the big boxes. And so keep that in mind when it comes to your local farmer or rancher. I actually think the farmers market model is not ideal because they have to take a whole day or two out of their actual work to go and set up a pop-up and sell there. I think what you're saying is probably more sustainable and preferable if I were a
yeah,
farmer, because I would not want to take days or hire somebody to go sit at the farmer's market, right? It's just
yeah,
it's not the most efficient. Now, if there's a co-op where they can supply the meat or the foods and then someone else is working there, 6 days a week, that's different. But the farmer's market is fun for the consumer. I don't know that it's fun for the producer.
yeah.
That's just my take on it. So speaking of producers, I do wanna take a little break here and and just give a word to our affiliate sponsors, and, I'm gonna play a commercial in a minute. Before I do that, I promised my listeners that I would tell you we got a big shipment from My Pillow. And,
Ooh,
yes, and they sent us, sheets and towels, and they sent us, some kitchen towels, and everybody was asking about the kitchen towels. So I have some. I remember to bring them on set. So look, these kitchen towels, I got the 6 pack. I only brought 2 to show you. But look at the detailing on this, and also look at the stitching. I've washed and dried them several times. Our housekeeper has washed and dried them, so they're not getting special treatment. They're not getting, like, hanging dry, no dryer, none of that, right? They're just getting used, and look how good they wash up, and they're huge. They're like the ones that you buy in those big stores in the mall, like the really high-end kitchen stores, huge. And then look at the colors. Look at this beautiful terry cloth. I like the blue. There's another blue that has a jacquard, print, and so that's really beautiful. The other thing I wanted to tell you guys is the gossamer bedspread. I didn't bring it because it's on the bed. It is so beautiful. I was hesitant at first because it's summer weight. It seems very thin when you take it out of the package, and I was skeptical. But I'm gonna tell you, if you're looking to update your bed for a very reasonable price, if you have a lightweight duvet, just put the gossamer thing over it, and it's reversible. So, so pretty. It's completely changed the whole look of my bed, and it's a great price. So when you go there, use promo code Mary Grace. That's my pitch for that. I wanted to show you all that and hang out for just a minute. Don't go away. Dr. Troy and I are going to take a step aside and let you see the rest of our affiliate partners so that you can help support the show by going and patronizing these businesses. We'll be right back. BRB. mypillow.com, use promo code Mary Grace, and buy everything you need for the home. There's no need to spend time shopping anywhere else. Go to mypillow.com, use promo code Mary Grace, get your towels, pillows, sheets, robes, dog beds, pet beds, cat beds, whatever it is that you want for the home. Go to mypillow.com, promo code Mary Grace. It's easy. Don't waste your time anywhere else. mypillow.com, promo code Mary Grace. Thank you. Listen, your health is your best investment. We have a country to save, and we need people who are in the best shape of their lives, physically, mentally, spiritually. Why not connect with a team who cares about you on every single level from the inside out? Official Synapse is that team. Officialsynapse.com. It's official, synapse.com. Tell them Mary Grace sent you, and they will treat you like family. If you're like most people, you really probably haven't thought about transferring your paper dollars into physical gold and silver. But I want to tell you a story. My friend Andrew Sorcini over at Beverly Hills Precious Metals, he recently went overseas and he wanted to buy a watch. He likes fine watches. He took 3 currencies with him. He took gold, he took Bitcoin, and he took American dollars. Now, there used to be a time when the American dollar was king. I remember that when I used to travel overseas. Everybody wanted dollars. The people that he was dealing with would not take his dollars because the dollar is so devalued around the world. They wanted the gold. So this is what I recommend to you. I want you to think about this. If you have cash in the bank, if you have an investment account that you have worked hard for years to accumulate, consider the value of converting that money into physical gold and silver. You're not buying something that's losing value. You're changing those worthless dollars into a tangible physical asset that will go up in value, which it has done historically. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to bh-pm.com. The first thing you're going to do is schedule that free consultation. Second thing, just think rationally about this, pray about it, go to the Lord, see what the best decision for you and your family is. I can't tell you that. I don't want to pressure you into that. What I do know is don't be scared, be prepared. And so the third thing you want to do is make a decision for you and your family. Make a decision, take action. bh-pm.com. Let them know Mary Grace sent you. When it comes to food, we really want to be aware of what is in the food that we're consuming. And that includes different types of technologies, jibber jabbers, technology that can alter your genetic makeup. And this is why we want to focus on American grown beef that isn't injected with things that you wouldn't put into your own body. We really don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We saw 4 years ago what happened when the whole country shut down and people couldn't even go to the grocery store. We saw what happened when meat and other foods were rationed, and that could happen any day. We want you to be prepared. We want you to take action. And one of the best ways to do that is to secure food for yourself and your family. What better way than to go to griddownchowdown.com, use promo code Mary Grace, get a sustainable, reliable, shelf-stable source of high-quality American beef. All you do is go to griddownchowdown.com, tell them Mary Grace sent you, put your order in the basket and check out, and you're good to go. The other thing you can do is you can get a subscription. If you do a subscription, you're going to get this freeze-dried beef delivered to your door every month. And you're going to save a little bit while you do that. You're going to stockpile it, or you can just cook with it. Some people are just using it for their regular cooking. It's really up to you, but it's super convenient because it's freeze-dried and it's shelf-stable for 12, 15 years or more. I just want to give a shout out to everybody who watches this show. Thank you for being a participant. Thank you for being a loyal audience member. I just want to remind you, if you like what you've seen, please share this and don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications, and also sign up for my email list so you never miss a show. We're back. We're back. I forgot to tell people in the beginning, get on the email list. So it's right there, marygracemedia.com. Join the email list. That is how you know that we have these shows, because you can't rely necessarily on the other platforms to tell you. Okay, so we're back with Dr. Troy Spurill. And this is kind of getting to the fun part of the show because not that it all isn't fun, but Dr. Troy takes questions. And those of you who are here today, and you do have some questions, you have been putting them in the chat. We will try to find them. I'm looking on Rumble. We don't have a huge audience on Rumble. Listen, if you're on Rumble or any of the platforms, one of the things that you can do to help us a lot is to go underneath the video and hit the thumbs up. When you hit the thumbs up, it helps to get it moved up in the algorithm. The other thing is, whether you're watching live or you come back on the replay, please leave a comment. Leave a comment. Let us know where you're coming from, what you think of the content, tag other people. All of that helps to get this up into the algorithm. I forgot to, we're on Instagram today. And so all of this content is all over, and we want you to have access to it, and we want other people to have access to it, and we can't rely on these platforms to get it there. It's really up to you. That's why they call it social media, because you're the social part. And so Dr. Spurrill is going to answer a few questions. He did last time. It was a great success. And have you seen any of the questions that are in the chat that you
Yeah, I just
wanna
have a quick
tackle?
comment. So, it's
Yeah.
actually one of my favorite parts is to answer questions because I think education is such a big part of how we're going to take care of ourselves. I just want to little shout out to Scott from Scotland there because my
Mm.
daughter was just in Scotland and loved it. I have my heritage is from Scotland, and she got me not this hat, but another hat that is very similar directly from Scotland. So I just have a special place for Scotland. So I appreciate Scott
Aw,
watching, and I
Scott is
on
a longtime listener.
yes,
Yeah, and
so love
he has
that.
a he has a cat, I think, that's bigger than Barley George. His name is Tom his cat's name is Thomas. So, hi, Thomas. Barley George is right here next to me. So, uh, yeah, he's a big one of our OG fans. Um, all right, so what do we see here? Lots of people saying grow your own food, buy locally. Some people had some questions earlier. Oh, is cooking with olive oil at high heat bad for you too? That's Allison on Facebook.
Yeah, I saw that question. That's a good question. It's not that it's bad for you, it's just not as good. So if you have to do that because you don't have coconut oil, then go ahead and do that. And at the same time, though, I'm always going to just tell people to try and get as much of the olive oil at room temperature as possible. And then if you're doing that 80% of the time, you're going to be in a good place. So realistically, we do cook at high heat and we have to, and it's okay. We're getting really into this
Mm,
into the weeds when it comes to that the semantics of it. So try not to cook with olive oil high heat, but if you have to, don't worry about it. The stress of worrying about getting everything right will cause more problem than the olive
mhm.
oil at high heat. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I found out something too for people who are introducing more fats into their diet, animal fats, cutting carbs, introducing more meats and fats, that if you tend to have gastric issues, by adding fat, try adding cold fat. So
Yeah.
if you have melted fat, melted butter, melted tallow, the fat from the hamburger, don't pour it over your food melted, because that can give you even a little bit of diarrhea. And so that may discourage you, and you may think that it's the meat that's causing you the problems, but it's not necessarily. It's actually the rendered fats. And so that's just a little tip that I've learned from, researching and being more exposed, especially to the carnivore community. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know. And I think a lot of people end up just not sticking with it if that happens to them. So, I
Yeah,
don't
and
know
the reason
why is that?
well, yeah, exactly. So the reason that that happens is because people's bile system is not operating properly. The
Okay.
bile is made in the liver, stored in the gallbladder, and if it sits there too long, you get gallstones. So if our bile is too thick, then it becomes very problematic and it irritates our bile duct, and we get nauseous and we get that full feeling and we get even reflux and different things like that. So
Okay.
on the bile system requires you have to be hydrated, number one. your hormones have to be in balance. Your liver reprocesses the hormones. And so if you're exposed to too many fake hormones or endocrine disruptors like pesticides, then it can really cause problems in that bile system. And so we start to see a thickened bile. And some people will do a gallbladder cleanse or cleaning of the bile just by fasting, by consuming lots of water, making sure your bowels are moving. It can help quite a bit with that bile system. But a lot of times we get depleted in what's called glutathione because of how toxic our environment is right now. And things like N-acetylcysteine can help replenish that. And a lot of times you have to thin the bile by avoiding a lot just foods for a good 24 to 36 hours. And then some people will do like a half a cup of olive oil to get the gallbladder to really contract, to get a lot of that old thick bile out of there. But it's very, very important to just keep our liver and bile system going. But unfortunately, a lot of the medications and a lot of the hormones that we're exposed to through our food and or through hormone mimicking pesticides, things like that, can really cause problems and wreak havoc with that system.
Wow, that is a good explanation. I've heard the solution for what happens when fat irritates you when you're reintroducing fats into your diet. I haven't heard the explanation for why.
Yeah.
So, thank you. That's really helpful. And the people in the comments are liking this too. Okay, we have a question from Allison. It looks like we're talking a lot about cooking today. So, what about avocado oil to cook with?
Yeah, I love avocado oil to cook with. My general rule, just to keep it kind of simple, is low heat or room temperature olive oil, medium heat avocado oil, high heat coconut oil. If you end up cooking with at high heat with avocado
Mhm.
and olive oil, that's okay occasionally, but that's my general rule of thumb. And I actually kind of like, with a couple exceptions. I'm a steak guy, so I will have steak at high heat to get that sear to keep the juices in. But beyond that, I usually try to cook on low to medium heat for an extended period of time.
Mhm.
So, with the exception of the nice sear on the steak,
Mhm.
I'll
Mhm.
cook low to medium heat most of the time.
Have you ever tried the reverse sear? I learned this from Chef Gruel on he's on X and YouTube. That's very interesting because you cook on low heat, you put the
Yep,
steaks in the oven on low heat until they get up to, the not up to temperature because they're gonna continue cooking,
yep,
so just before what you want for your final temperature, then you put them on the high heat in the quick sear in the, cast iron, I do,
yep,
right? So that's kind of interesting, and like I said, I've been using tallow, and I really like it. It doesn't smoke, it doesn't, add flavor really, which is interesting.
yep,
It's just and it's not salty or anything like that. Of course, because butter burns, a lot of people like to cook in butter, but it has so
yep.
many milk solids that it can burn really fast. So I've learned a lot about this, and, um, it's just it's so interesting. So, when it comes to the slower cooking, what is it that appeals to you about that, especially with meats?
So the slower cooking, again, if you get a sear and then and then slow cook it with meats, it just helps retain some of the flavor. So for me, it's purely a taste thing, and for most other foods, a slow cook helps just get like an even cook across the whole thing. So for me, it's easier to manage, and I get it pretty much exactly how I like it when I do more of a slow cook.
Mhm.
I get in trouble when I'm too fast in life, when I'm busy, which is like
Yeah.
the majority of the
Yeah,
time. I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
have 10
yeah.
kids, 13 grandkids, and 12,000 patients. So there's a lot to manage all the time. So I can get
Amazing.
into that space of go, 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 go all the time. And so
Okay.
just the slow cooking, I think, is healthier because fewer mistakes are made, the taste of it, and food is meant to nourish our brains and our cells. We just happen to live in a time when we have an abundance of things that can make it taste good. but we have to make sure, first and foremost, that it's providing the raw ingredients for all of our cells. And so when I slow cook it, I feel better about how that aspect is being done, especially when I look at any type of vegetables. If I'm slow cooking vegetables, I want to keep it some of the live enzymes in there as much, and it's easier to manage. Overcooking of vegetables is one of my little pet peeves, so that's why I try to do a little bit of a slow cook on that too. And vegetables,
Mhm.
when done right, are just so tasty.
Yeah, they are, and okay, this is a comment, not a question, but it's from our friend Scott in Scotland. He says that he says, "A 24-hour fast works for me." And so that we're hearing a lot about this. We're hearing
Yeah,
about intermittent fasting. There are some opinions that it really is not good, especially for women, because it can raise your cortisol levels, and then that makes you retain fat, and it puts your body in a fight or flight mode. What is your thought about fasting? You know, yeah, just can it be beneficial to some
yeah.
people? How often, how frequently is it beneficial?
I'll tell you exactly how to manage fasting. So what we do know is 25% of the population shouldn't fast. Shouldn't
Okay.
fast because of certain conditions and some of it being genetic. If fasting raises your cortisol, it means your blood sugar is dropping too low. So we call that reactive hypoglycemia, and that's either because you have a challenge in getting distribution of sugar where it needs to go, or you have a challenge in an overreaction, too much insulin being released because of poor diet and lifestyle. So you just have to
Okay.
know your body. So the best way to do it is to actually check your blood sugar. If you fast and your blood sugar is normal or in a good state, meaning it's 80 or 90, then you're fine. And it's a detox reaction. If you fast and your blood sugar is dropping into the 70, below 75, 60s or 50s even, then that's a sign it's dropping way too low, and you shouldn't be doing the fasting just yet. Intermittent
Okay.
fasting, there's a gene sequence called the COMT gene sequence, and that deals with anxiety and other factors as well as detox. And 25% of those people shouldn't fast directly because of their inability to detoxify properly. Now, the majority of people will do well with fasting. I always recommend starting with intermittent fasting, where you just eat during an 8-hour window and then don't eat for a 16-hour window, and see how you feel. If you do well with a 24-hour fast, on occasion, you can do a 3-day fast. You can also do a more extended 7-day fast for some people. It is very cleansing and it is very helpful. And by fast, I mean water only fasts, because there are dry fasts where you don't do water or anything. One 24-hour cycle of dry fast is equal to a 3-day cycle of a wet fast. And
Wow.
some people, I will say this, you got to be really careful. So don't do this by yourself. You have to be under the supervision of someone who's used to doing this. But if you do a dry fast, many people with autoimmune disease have reversed their autoimmune diseases with a dry fast, a 10-day dry fast. However, I just
Wow.
saw a patient who came in and I'm not sure where she got this, but she got information from somewhere on the internet, and she did a 40-day fast, and of the 40 days, 20 days was dry fast. That is extremely dangerous. And the good news is she was going blind. So she was very desperate with her autoimmune. She was going blind. It
Mhm.
reversed the autoimmune. So she didn't go blind, but she gained 80 pounds because of how it wreaked havoc with her hormones. And so we're fixing
Interesting.
it now. So this was 2 years ago. So we're going in and correcting
Um,
that counterbalance. But that tells you how
I'm gonna
important the
hold you keep talking, you keep talking.
yeah, absolutely. So it's really important to do anything with a dry fast. Uh, just know it's extremely has to be managed properly. And we do know that when your body is under short-term stress, it will release some adrenaline. But in long-term stress, like fasting for extended periods of time, it's going to start storing cortisol, or I mean, cortisol is going to start storing fat around your organs to keep your organs alive. And that is the toxic type of fat, the visceral
Okay.
fat. So
Okay.
it has to be managed properly.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's why I like two things. I like the 24-hour fasting,
Mhm.
and I do like, for people who do 3-day fasts, I like to do it where you keep your body guessing. Just like
Okay.
2,000 years ago, if Jesus was walking from town to town, he didn't know if he was going to have a 24, 48-hour fast or if he's going to feast. Those types of things are actually good for our body. Now, I'm a huge routine guy at the same time, but when it comes
Yeah.
to fasting,
Yeah.
it's good to mix it up a little bit, every once in a while, from
This
month to
is
month.
this is so interesting. I'm so glad that Scott made this comment.
Yeah,
He said, "I'm not a woman, I'm a trucker." I know, I know. My comment about women was having to do with, because I feel like a lot of women inadvertently fast because they're so busy, and you do get a little bit of adrenaline from fasting, and so you can go, 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 and, people drink coffee and things like that to keep themselves going, but that was kind of where that comment was coming from, and I actually wanna bring this conversation back, uh, when we next come back. I do have to end the show here and sign off, unfortunately, because I've got, a delivery coming, and I was hoping they would come later, but they're not. So I've got great comments here. I think what I would recommend, especially because I think fasting is really coming on people's radar, this would be a good time to team up with Dr. Troy and his team, because especially if you have autoimmune, if you have a lot going on in your body, to me, my instinct tells me that it's just not wise to embark on this by yourself. If you're on Especially if you're on medications, if you're dealing with multiple issues, whether it's autoimmune, injuries or recent things that are coming up, like this case with the woman who did 40 days, she was in an extreme situation, but there was a lot of fallout from that.
yeah,
And so she kind of robbed Peter to pay Paul. And so I would really encourage you, to reach out to Dr. Troy and his team, at officialsynapse.com. And the link is up here on the screen. If you do that, just let them know that Mary Grace sent you. The discovery call is free, right? They can just
yeah,
have a conversation, figure out if it might be a good fit, and then your team will explain what the options could be for them if they decide to work with you, right?
yep,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, so I think this I don't want people to get in trouble, with jumping into something like that, because I think people hear success stories and then they decide, "Oh, I'm gonna do that." But
Yeah,
they
yep,
but everybody's unique, and people don't take into account their incredibly unique situation, especially given what we've all been through for the past 4 years, right?
yes,
It's I mean, crazy. Like, I'm just realizing that I'm dealing with PTS from a lot of what we went through, just trying to protect my family. And I
yeah,
think a lot of people are coming to that awareness. It's like you're coming out of a fog. And so, your team is there and working with people all over the country and all over the world. And so it's a blessing that you're there, and you're also helping people find local practitioners too,
yes.
which is really great. So last words for our listeners today. I apologize for cutting everybody short. I was hoping my delivery would come at the end of the 3-hour window, but they're coming at the beginning. So, Edme has one question, and I think that's a good one to close on. She says, "I don't have any major, ongoing symptoms. Can Synapse still help me get balanced?"
Oh, I love this question because the
Yeah.
answer is yes. It just will mean there's probably less work to do. So
Mhm.
we assess people for wellness and look at just little things, and we look at trends so we can tell you what to do to prevent things. So, for example, I had a patient that came in, went to Mayo Clinic here in Minnesota, and they said, "It looks like you're going to get MS. Come back when you have MS, and we can help you." Well, she followed up with us and said, "I don't want to get MS." And
Yeah,
we assessed her, found out what was going on,
yeah,
corrected it. That was 15 years ago. She still has never gotten MS. So, same
yeah,
thing. We can look at what your weaknesses are, start helping people with diet, lifestyle, finding some of the little holes. and it can help quite a bit. And I'm going to answer one other question real quick because it's a
Yep,
fast one.
yep.
It was about electrolytes. And yes, if you're fasting, I do recommend electrolytes. I also recommend electrolytes if you're doing something like the carnivore diet. So electrolytes you want to stay
Mhm.
on top of, just like blood
Yeah.
sugar. Electrolytes are just as equal. So good, great question. Your audience is always, I do a lot of shows and your audience asks the best questions. They're really, really good. And they have the best comments. So I know I'm speaking to an educated crowd.
We have an incredible audience, and this
Yeah.
is why I really like doing live shows. So thank you to all of my audience who have been with me short time, long time. You're all valued. And as always, you can reach out to me at info@marygracemedia.com. If you do have a question after the fact, please drop it in the chat and I will try to get it to Dr. Troy and his team. And I will also get you the link so that you can contact them directly. We are on multiple platforms, and we love it when people come back and leave comments on the replay. I will be back this week with more great content. And we do have 2 weeks from today, our friend Praying Medic coming back. I know he's a big fan favorite, and he'll be here on the show for another episode of Conspiracy of Truth. So mark your calendars for the 20th of May. Can't believe that's in 2 weeks. Is that the 2 weeks? Something like that. The 20th. Okay, everybody have a great day. And thank you again to everybody for all of your incredible comments and questions. And we will see you back here soon on Mary Grace TV. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share, hit that thumbs up on under the video so that they know that you were here and that you liked it.